This week on Africa Weekly, we go back to Burundi, where weeks of protest have taken their toll on the economy in the run-up to disputed elections. Then we head to Morocco, where a boom in its organic food market is putting the focus back on quality. And finally to Uganda, where young people are being drawn to a new and catchy news bulletin, read by hip-hop artists turned rap-orters. But first, a summary of the stories that made the headlines this week. On Wednesday, leaders from 26 African countries signed a potentially historic free trade deal in Egypt to create a common market spanning half the continent. The deal integrates 3 existing trade blocs whose countries have a combined GDP of more than $1 trillion and eases the movement of goods in an area home to 625 million people. A UN report released on Monday accused the Eritrean government of systematic and widespread human rights abuses that the investigation claims to be driving out 5,000 Eritreans every month.
It is not surprising to us that these days a large proportion of those crossing the Mediterranean and using other irregular routes to reach Europe are Eritreans. They're fleeing a country ruled not by law, but by fear.
The nearly 500-page-long report describes torture, including electric shock, near drowning, sexual abuse, and forcing people to stare at the sun for hours. Eritrea dismissed the accusations as outrageous claims. During 3 days of talks in Abuja, Nigerian President Muhammadu Buhari argued for a Nigerian to control operations of a new regional fighting force against Boko Haram. The 5-nation coalition backed Buhari's stance on Thursday. The same day, residents reported 43 people killed in raids on 4 villages in Borno State. Oscar Pistorius, the South African amputee sprinter who shot dead his girlfriend Riva Steenkamp, is said to be freed on parole in August after serving just 10 months in jail, according to officials. The announcement sparked anger from Steenkamp's family. And finally, we bring you these images from Libya's popular equestrian festival in Tripoli. Hundreds of Libyans celebrated last Friday in the spirit of national reconciliation as their country continues to be gripped by civil war. The Burundian government claims that weeks of protests are now over, but the reality is rather different. Protesters continue to oppose the third-term bid by the president, and the political crisis is now crippling the economy of this tiny East African nation.
Activity has ground to a halt at this rice depot in Burundi's capital, Bujumbura. A few weeks ago, police came to close it down, accusing the manager of selling rice to protesters.
Before, I was going home with more than $3 in my pocket because I'm in charge of loading the rice. But today it's a nightmare. I can't even make 1 cent.
Burundi's political crisis began in April and is shaking the country's already fragile economy. It started when President Pierre Nkurunziza announced he would run for a controversial third term. Street violence has forced many shops and factories to shut, with some having to lay off staff. And weeks of protests have disrupted supplies, so prices have soared.
The cost of all products has risen. Today we have to work really hard to buy enough to eat. The price of rice, flour, tomatoes, it's all shot up.
At this market in Bujumbura, customers are scarce.
Today customers come in dribs and drabs. Really, it's like nothing works here. Whereas before you could go home with a good amount of money, now whole days can pass without selling a thing.
According to analysts, an end to the violence won't necessarily bring an end to Burundi's economic crisis. Many fear a win by the president could provoke further aid cuts by international donors, risking isolation that would only deepen its woes.
Here in the north of Morocco, a small cheese factory is at the forefront of the country's new agricultural drive. It's one of 21 members of an association which grants the Protected Regions label. Created by the government in 2008, the label aims to improve the quality of local products.
There's a problem with quality. Moroccans are starting to ask for products that carry a label. It's a new culture in Morocco. People are starting to differentiate.
To respond to demand, they plan to double their output.
I come here for the goat cheese because it's organic and I know this shop. Their work is clean.
Agriculture is a substantial business in Morocco. It represents 20% of the gross national product and 40% of the workforce. To improve quality, local authorities are counting on small producers.
We have olive oil, we have dates, we have clementines from Berkane. We have many products, over 200. Morocco has significant wealth. That's why we've given priority to the Green Morocco plan, with a roadmap and a development strategy for the commercialization of homegrown products.
But they are still facing competition from lower quality and cheaper products. A kilo of labeled cheese starts at €10 or $13. It's a high price for Moroccans, especially when most struggle to make ends meet.
Ugandans call them rap-orters, a youth program of hip-hop artists turned journalists, rapping the headlines.
Seeking an end to third world debt and poverty, or Akon, hoping to light up Africa with electricity, put to good use nothing beats the power of celebrity.
Hearing the news in hip-hop may sound strange, but in Uganda, where the press faces censorship pressures and the country's huge youth population often take little interest in current affairs, this program has become a hit.
We are rappers already, and being that even through our music we spread the message, and the kind of news we wanted to do was the educative, entertaining, political kind of stuff. So being that we are rappers, we decided to make it a rap format kind of news.
Newsbeat, screened in both English and the local language Luganda on the popular channel NTV, launched last year. Each 5-minute episode covers local, regional, and international news. Nothing is off limits, and the program has reported stories on Uganda's anti-pornography laws, the political situation in Ukraine, and Ebola updates from West Africa.
Mostly it has also inspired the youth to watch the news, because of the beat and the rap, so it doesn't make them, bored, and they're there, and they also get the education out of it.
Ugandan activists have repeatedly warned that press freedoms in this East African country are rapidly shrinking. Last October, one journalist was ordered to pay damages or face jail after accusing a government official of corruption, and there have been other similar cases. But as dust settles over Uganda's capital, a crowd gathers around a public TV to follow the beat.
The main difference between Newsbeat and the other news is that Newsbeat talks about the underground issues that the other news stations won't touch.
And
the viewer enjoys it and always discovers new things.
Newsbeat is so far sidestepping the censors and reaching out to new audiences with its unique blend of rhyme and reason.
In a study released this week, scientists found that wild chimpanzees have an innate taste for a tipple, dipping leaves in palm wine. The findings could shed light on a theory about evolution, dubbed the drunken monkey hypothesis. Next week, we'll descend into the mines of Katanga in the Democratic Republic of Congo, which have been struck by chronic power shortages. And we'll meet the South African rugby team, who need to conform to new selection criteria being applied to raise non-white participation. That's all from us at Africa Weekly. Until next week.